Episode 2, Westward Bound. It's winter, 1895, in Cascade, Montana. It's a blur of white and wind. The windows are latched and chimneys glowing. The road is a rumor. Out of it, one figure keeps moving. Nearly 60, almost 6 feet tall, born enslaved. She leans her weight into a U.S. mail wagon, with the eagle on the side and a canvas bag that matters more than anything else.
Ice slicks the reins. The horses drop their heads and they trust her voice. In her pocket, there's a little whiskey for warmth. Under the seat, a shotgun. At her hip, a revolver that has ended more arguments than it has ever fired. If the drift swallows the road, she walks. If the wolves fan out, she makes herself taller and louder until they think better of it. In town, people listen for hoofbeats and the bell at the depot. When she arrives, clocks restart, news moves, and a life can continue.
They call her Stagecoach Mary. She delivers through storms, feuds, mountains, and men with opinions. By law, that canvas bag is protected, a piece of the Republic. Touch it, and you're not just stealing. You are picking a fight with the United States.
Before the blizzard, there was a price cut that kept the mail alive when it almost failed. There were star routes that stitched cabins to towns, a 10-day sprint on horseback that made headlines and then stepped aside when the wire began to click. Trains that turned into moving post offices, clerks sorting while the prairie slid by in the dark.
This is the thread, a public promise that kept widening the map, and a woman who took that promise into her own hands and made it feel personal at a front gate in Montana.
This is a story about how a country binds itself together, one route at a time. It is a story about the post office.
This season, we're telling the story of the United States Postal Service, not as a boring bureaucracy, but as a force. One that quietly shaped the nation's geography, economy, and sense of connection. Sometimes in ways that uplifted people, sometimes in ways that left scars.
This was the institution that reached mountaintop cabins and desert towns, bustling cities and remote rural routes where even horses hesitated. It moved love letters and eviction notices, draft orders and wedding invitations. It carried survival, and sometimes grief.
Through the lens of the post office, we're tracing something bigger, how America tried to stitch itself together. How it turned distant outposts and contested territories into something it could call a nation.
Sometimes that meant connection and infrastructure. Other times, it meant violence, displacement. Entire communities left out or pushed out to make way for a different kind of progress.
The system didn't always go in the way the designers planned. Because once you build a public institution, once you create something that touches everywhere, it can start doing things you've never expected.
People find ways to make space inside it, not by asking for permission, but by showing up fully, boldly, and undeniably, by doing the job better than anyone else, by refusing to be invisible.
They take the tools meant to serve someone else and use them to build something for themselves. A life, a livelihood, a place in the world.
Even when the system was built to exclude them. The early post office wasn't made for Black women. It was run by white men for white men, with laws that excluded Black people and social norms that kept women far from the reins of power, or a stagecoach.
But Mary didn't wait for an invitation. She turned the system into a path, a lifeline, a lever. Not because it was designed for her, but because she made it work for her anyways. And that's not breaking the rules, that's reclaiming power.
And no one embodied that more than Mary Fields. A Black woman, formerly enslaved, 6 feet tall, cigar-smoking, stagecoach driving, and absolutely refusing to follow the rules the post office or the country had laid out for someone like her.
I'm Aileen, and this is People of Agency, a podcast about the U.S. Postal Service, public institutions, and the ordinary people who built them, broke them, and fought like hell to make them work for everyone.
I'm Maia Warner Langenbaum, and this is episode 2, Westward Bound.
Act 1. Expansion and Contradiction.
When we left off last episode, the mail had put the country in conversation with itself. But that discussion was selective. It centered white, land-owning America, while they acted like huge parts of the continent were blank spaces. Congress wanted to fill in what they saw blank with two choice words: manifest, destiny. Manifest says obvious. Destiny says inevitable. Together, they feel that it's a permission slip. On the ground, it meant soldiers and surveyors, families uprooted, treaties broken on purpose, languages driven towards silence and the spread of slavery, and communities living through cultural genocide. But it was sold as destiny. People thought it sounded noble. It sounded justified. It justified theft and erasure.
But before we expand west, we have to talk about the 1840s, because the whole postal system almost face-planted. More people could read, more people wanted to write, and letter volume should have been booming.
Instead, the pricing was a mess. You paid by distance and by the sheet, sometimes at delivery, and you might wait while a postmaster weighed your heartbreak on a scale. Enter the disruptors. Private letter carriers saw the chaos and said, what if we charge less and just do it? Like the Uber of envelopes. They undercut the government on price and stole the very traffic that should have funded the public system.
So Congress had a choice. Let the institution starve or fix it. And in 1845, they went full Black Friday. Rates were slashed by more than 70%. An 18-cent letter became 5 cents on many routes. Simpler distances, simpler math. Then stamps arrived. First in 1847, so you can prepay without a postmaster weighing your feelings. By the mid-1850s, prepaying by stamp is the rule for most domestic letters. Suddenly, the mail is predictable. You know the price. You can plan the trip to the counter. And you don't need a spreadsheet. It is the 19th century version of turning on unlimited texting. People wrote more. People moved knowing they could still be reached. Those reforms did not just rescue the post office, they made long-distance life administratively possible and pushed the Great Migration west along an invisible thread.
The remaining problem was not appetite. It was distance. You can promise to reach everyone, but you still have to get over mountains, through swamps, and across winters that eat wagons for breakfast. This is where star routes enter. The term started as 3 little asterisks in a ledger, a shortcut for a legal standard that said the mail had to move with celerity, certainty, and security. The plan is simple and hard at the same time. Hire private contractors to go where regular routes cannot reliably reach, and then let them choose the fastest, surest way to do it.
And they did. By horses and wagons where a track existed. By sleds when snow erased the map. By flatboats in the bayous. By dog teams in Alaska reading the sky by the color of the snow. In some places, the destination is a counter at a general store. In others, it is a marked rock at the edge of a field because the point is connection, not architecture. For some households, the mail carrier is the only visitor all week. You hear hoofbeats and you know the outside world still remembers your name. Neither rain nor heat nor gators, apparently. It is giving postal apocalypse montage in the best way.
One method defines the look of this era. The stagecoach. Big wheels, lacquered body with scuffs that read like diary entries. 6 horses when the grade is mean. Inside, bundles of letters, stacks of newspapers. Sometimes a strong box that makes everyone sit up straighter. Companies like Overland Mail and Wells Fargo ran federal contracts on routes that felt like tightropes. The contracts did more than move mail. They justified roads, ferries, repairs, stage stops that could turn into towns. Mail first, then roads, then banks, then everything else.
The post office is not chasing the frontier here. It is sketching it. Once a post office arrives, even in the sparsest outpost, That place counts. It is somewhere you can put an address. And sometimes that address picks a winner.
Take Denver, where I live. In the late 1850s, there are two scrappy rivals near a river bend. Auraria lands the first post office, and it looks like the favorite. Then, Denver City wins the stage route and the heavier mail traffic. Auraria then folds into Denver. The mail picks winners, which makes me, spiritually, a product of a sorting decision.
For white settlers, mail delivery was not only about staying connected, it was leverage. Every new route through contested land gave them a reason to demand troops. Protection for the mail, they would say. But really, it meant protecting their presence, making their settlement feel permanent, justified, backed by federal power.
If a stagecoach got robbed, even by another settler or a rogue group of bandits, it was reported as a threat to federal infrastructure. It was this level of threat because back in 1792, Congress passed the first Postal Act. It made mail a protected good. That meant it could not be opened, censored, or intercepted by the government. It was secure, private, and sacred. That meant Washington could send in troops when it was under threat.
The result? Escalation. Entire military forts were built to protect mail routes. And most of that escalation fell hardest on Indigenous communities, whether or not they were anywhere near the attack.
Mail delivery became a tool of expansion, and protection was a cover for occupation. You can hear the late-night monologue in that line. The army literally built forts to keep the mail moving. Your package came with a fortress. Special delivery featuring special forces. But the punchline is not funny out there on the ground. A guard post becomes a fort becomes a footprint, and a footprint becomes pressure on the people who are already there.
Meanwhile, the danger is real for the carriers. Stagecoaches often carry payrolls, land claims, banknotes alongside letters. Bandits learn the choke points. Some stretches get nicknames you don't say in front of children. The official answer to the chaos is to protect the mail. In practice, that protection rearranges the map. That is the contradiction baked into the system. The same roots that keep far-flung families in touch also extend federal reach into contested ground.
The country is speeding up. California is booming. New towns want to prove that they're real. Newspapers want news before it goes stale. Businesses want contracts signed yesterday. Families want to know a son is still alive. Waiting 3 weeks for a letter feels like hitting refresh and getting, please allow 30 days. No one out west is accepting that.
So a group of businessmen pitch a simple, wild fix. Put riders on fast horses. Build a chain of tiny stations a few miles apart. Swap horses, swap riders, never let the mailbag cool. Promise the West Coast a letter from Mississippi in about 10 days.
It is a startup built on oats and adrenaline. It's pricey to use, but it's spectacular to watch. And it's designed to prove a point more than it is to turn a profit. The headline is speed.
It won't make money. It will make a legend.
The Pony Express.
Would you ride for the Pony Express?
My initial answer was fuck yes, and then
You learned about
it? And then how long was each stint of riding?
I think just a few miles.
Oh, then yeah, absolutely I would.
And you made lots of money, but
Done.
you could die.
Easy. Well, if that's how I go, that's how I go, Aileen. Act 2. Myth of the Pony Express. Cue the Pony Express.
Dun dun dun.
It's 1860. The East Coast is buzzing with stamps and railroads. But west of the Missouri River, that buzz fades fast. California is booming. Gold, statehood, politics, but it's also isolated. If you want a letter from New York to San Francisco, you've got a few bad options. Send it by steamboat around South America and wait months, route it through Panama and hope disease outbreaks or bottlenecks don't strand the mail, or push it across the southern stage line in roughly 3 weeks. Weather, floods, and broken wheels willing. 3 weeks doesn't sound bad until you're waiting on election results, or news if your child survived a skirmish.
Enter three businessmen with more ambition than sense: William Russell, Alexander Majors, William Waddell. They're already transporting goods for the army, but they want something bigger: a $1 million government mail contract. So they pitch a service across the central route, shorter than the southern line, but riskier in winter. And their way to prove it? Launch the Central Overland California and Pikes Peak Express Company. Catchy name rolls right off the tongue. Their idea is part genius, part dare. Build a spine of tiny stations about every 10 to 15 miles. Keep a fresh horse waiting at each. Hire riders, who are basically jockeys. Put the mail in a leather cover called a mochila that slips on and off saddles like a hoodie. You never unpack. You just flip it on the next horse. Promise Pacific Coast a letter in 10 days, and then actually deliver it.
This is where the startup energy really shows. Imagine a 19th century demo day. Instead of PowerPoints, you have teenage boys galloping into town like they're auditioning for Yellowstone. The pitch is pure audacity. Our route is faster, leaner, and better. Trust us with the federal contract. The runs themselves are chaos and choreography at the same time. Riders cover 70 to 100 miles before handing off at the home station. Every 10 miles or so, they leap onto a new horse. Station keepers live lonely lives boiling coffee at odd hours, waiting to hear hoofbeats. The horses barely cool. The mail keeps moving. 200 miles per day across the Rockies and the desert.
And when it works, people notice. The first Westbound run makes it in about 11 days. Newspapers print arrival times like box scores. Then comes the flex: Lincoln's 1860 election results. Rushed west in just over 7 days and 17 hours. Californians read the news while the confetti is still on the ground back east. Suddenly, it feels like the continent is smaller.
But here's the catch, and isn't there always a catch? It's not a product for regular people. At launch, the price is $5 for half an ounce. That's, are you sure you want to send this kind of money? Equivalent to dropping $200 to mail a one-page letter today. Later, they cut it to $1, but that's still $30 today. So most personal letters stay on the slower stagecoach. What actually rides the pony? Business contracts on tissue-thin paper, newspaper dispatches, government orders. In other words, the pony is less your everyday postal worker and more like the premium FedEx overnight tier that your boss insists on billing to the company card.
And the riders? They're not the rugged middle-aged cowboys Hollywood loves. They're small, wiry, usually teenagers, light enough not to break a horse's back. There's a famous ad that supposedly read, "Orphans preferred, must be willing to risk death daily." Great copywriting, but it's a total myth. Historians have never found it in any newspaper. The real ads offered $50 a month plus room and board. But the going rate, once things start running? Around $100 a month. That's more than triple what a farmhand made. Risky money, but for a 16-year-old in 1860, that's basically NBA rookie salary vibes. But much WNBA rookie salaries.
And the stories are wild. A rider named Pony Bob Haslam once rode almost 190 miles in a single stretch to deliver Lincoln's inaugural address. 4 horses, 20 hours, a blizzard. Try complaining about your commute after that. Another kid, Billy Tate, was only 14 when he was killed in a raid, fighting until his last bullet. The job was brutal. But here's the thing. The image of constant ambush and arrows flying, it's mostly dime novel exaggeration. Out of hundreds of runs, only one mail shipment was ever truly lost. The biggest enemy was exhaustion.
And then there's Buffalo Bill Cody. Ask most people, and they'll tell you he was a Pony Express rider. Cody told people that too, in his autobiography. Problem is, he was probably still in school in Kansas while the pony was running. Historians politely call his story fiction.
Which didn't stop him from making it a career. By the 1880s, he was staging Pony Express reenactments in his Wild West shows. He turned himself into the West's first PR machine, basically an influencer before ring lights and hashtags.
Honestly, incredible.
Honestly, yeah, fair enough.
His brand got so big it outlived him. Even Buffalo, New York borrowed it. The city already had the buffalo as a mascot animal, but when their football team needed a new name, a fan suggested the Buffalo Bills after Cody.
A perfect combo. Buffalo the city, Buffalo the animal, and Buffalo Bill, the man who made himself famous by hunting buffalo and then performing it for sold-out crowds.
So yeah, every Sunday when fans scream, "Go Bills," they're technically cheering for a man who may have never ridden the Pony Express, but definitely knew how to ride a publicity wave. And as a Browns fan, I'll say that this move probably isn't much different than any other franchise.
The Pony Express business model, meanwhile, was a dumpster fire. Horses literally eat money. Stations cost money. Paying riders $100 a month eats even more money. They charged a premium and still bled red ink. One historian estimated that they lost $30 on every letter they carried. It's the 1860s version of WeWork. It looks good in the press, but it implodes in the books.
After running privately funded, in July 1861, they finally get what they want, a U.S. mail contract. But by then, the telegraph wires are racing across the plains. On October 24th, 1861, the line is complete. Short messages go coast to coast in minutes. 2 days later, the Pony Express is done, officially terminated. The last riders finish their runs in November. 18 months start to finish.
18 months? That's it. Shorter than the lifespan of most streaming shows. And yet, we remember it like it was a decades-long saga. Why? Because it looked good. Lean boys on fast horses carrying the fate of a continent in their saddlebags. It symbolized grit, daring, and man versus wilderness.
We remember the flash, not the funding, the lone hero, not the chain of stations, horses, contracts, and creditors. But the truth is, even this legend only worked because it ran in the shadow of the post office. The Mochila carried federal mail alongside private stamps. The routes were chosen to prove that the Central Corridor could be tied to the national grid. The Pony Express was an asterisk in postal history.
A dazzling, expensive, but short-lived asterisk. You want to know a fun fact about Buffalo Bill Cody?
Yes.
I don't think anyone actually knows for sure where he's buried or is honest about it. Because I think we have a burial site for Buffalo Bill Cody in Golden. And I think there's another one in Wyoming. And then there's definitely at least a third one somewhere else, too, that also claims they're the gravesite of Buffalo Bill Cody.
Wow. I didn't realize he was so big, but you were saying in Denver, people know him a lot more.
Yeah, the organization I grew up riding with used to always have a Buffalo Bill impersonator run like a Wild West show. Yeah. Wild stuff.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Act 3. Wired and rail ready.
Unfortunately, at least for me, the horse isn't the headline anymore. The click is. A wire crosses plains and mountains and deserts. The news rides it in minutes. That doesn't end the mail. It changes what belongs in the mail. Urgent numbers, military orders, market gossip, breaking headlines, that goes to the wire. The things that need breath and detail and feeling stay in the envelope. A mother's letter, a 3-page contract with notes in the margins, the newspaper that still lands on your porch, even though the first dispatch flew ahead of code.
Man, imagine getting like a good gossip in an envelope.
I would die. I think that might be my favorite thing to ever happen.
Let's take a quick pit stop on what the wire actually is. Think wooden poles, a single metal line strung on glass insulators, small batteries, and offices to push current, and keys that make and break the circuit. An operator taps short and long pulses, Morse code. Hundreds of miles out, the signal weakens. So relay stations boost it and send it on. Messages aren't spoken. They're heard as clicks on a sounder and written down by hand, then handed to messengers across town. It's fast, but it's also expensive and brief. You pay by the word, so don't waste words.
And that's the split. Urgency jumps to electricity. Everything else, commerce, memory, the long version of the truth, still needs a body to carry it. The stagecoach can't keep up with the weight of a nation, so the country chooses steel.
Congress writes the permission slip. The Pacific Railroad Act of 1862 doesn't just greenlight a railroad, it also mandates a telegraph along it. And the act says, plainly, the federal government gets to use both for mail and military purposes. Government gave bonds per mile of track, but the size of the bond was dependent on the difficulty of the terrain, smaller on level prairie and larger in mountains. It also granted public land and a checkerboard of alternating squares along the route, which the railroads could sell to finance construction. Across the 19th century, federal railroads' land grants totaled roughly 131 million acres, with state grants adding tens of millions more. In short, the companies laid the steel. The public bonds and land grants covered a significant share of the cost.
Postal contracts became the clock everyone trusts. They pay daily, they fine you if you miss, and they make bankers braver. Secure a mail contract, and you can justify laying a line passengers won't fill yet. Schedules get written around sacks. Junctions appear where bags have to change trains. You can see it in the old timetables. Make the connection for the night mail. Some rows even keep marginal passenger trains because the mail revenue makes the math work.
The web thickens fast. Before the war, roughly 30,000 miles of track. A decade later, about 50,000. And by the end of the century, north of 160,000 miles. Those rails don't just connect big cities. They connect post offices and distribution hubs and tiny junction towns that exist because the mail has to jump lines. If you've ever wondered why a dot on the map made it and others vanished, check where the mail ran on rails and where it didn't.
Now, the part that turns trains into a machine for letters, the railway mail service. During the war, postal officials try a hack on the Hannibal-St. Joseph line. Don't just haul bags, sort them while moving. By 1864, Chicago to Clinton, Iowa runs a railway post office car. Inside is a narrow workspace, just 60 feet long and 9 feet wide, with pigeonhole cases and pouch racks. Railway mail clerks become the sorting center itself, processing thousands of pieces per shift while the train rocks at track speed.
The setup is ingenious. In 1879, a clerk named Charles R. Harrison invents hinge cast iron fixtures that unfold until full sorting cases, pouch racks, and work tables, then fold flat against the walls when not in use. The pigeonholed cases become the heart of the operation, rows of labeled compartments where clerks distribute mail by destination. Above them, overhead bins. A safe for registered mail because these cars sometimes carry millions of dollars of gold bullion, military payrolls, and securities. Regulation pistols for security, usually a .38 caliber revolver, because train robberies by gangs like the James brothers aren't just folklore. They're a very real occupational hazard for the postal workers. There are also heating stoves, and later, electric lights so clerks can read addresses in the dim, rocking interior.
If defending bandits off while sorting the mail on a moving train doesn't sound hard, here's the part that sounds impossible. Clerks have to memorize something called schemes, which are mental maps of the entire American postal system. We're talking about 10,000 post offices. Not just names and locations, but geographic distribution across multiple states, connecting railway routes, transfer points, even street-level delivery zones in major cities. When a clerk picks up a letter addressed to a small town in Missouri, he has to know instantly, does this go via New York, Chicago, or St. Louis, Kansas City? Which train delivers it fastest? Does it need intermediate transfers? All from memory, all while standing in a cramped, rattling train doing 70 miles per hour. I would get so carsick.
I can't even imagine. I cannot even imagine.
No.
I can't read a book in the car.
Yeah, truly.
And it gets harder. The exam to qualify is absolutely brutal. You need a score of 97% or higher just to get in the door. Thousands compete for each position. Once hired, the real pressure starts. Regular card-cased examinations, where inspectors ride the car unannounced and test you, sort these cards into the right pigeonholes from memory. Maintain 97 to 99% accuracy. Oh, and do it at 600 pieces per hour. That's one piece every 6 seconds for hours while the train sways and lurches and the floor tilts under your feet. Imagine the mental discipline required for that.
If I imagine it, I'm going to throw up, so I'm not going to do that.
Okay, fair.
A Chicago clerk named Frank Galbraith creates visual memory aids to help new clerks learn the schemes. A soldier marching for Advance, Indiana, a bison for Buffalo, Illinois, a whiskey jug for Sweetwater. Clerks study at home on their days off because their jobs depend on it. If you score a 96, that's a warning from a division superintendent. The culture is relentless, but it creates a workforce that can literally process the nation's mail faster than anyone thought possible. They were the original high-speed data processors of America.
I love that.
It's so cool.
Then comes the trick that feels like a magic act: mail on the fly. A small town isn't big enough to warrant a train stop? Fine. Put a crane by the track with a leather pouch hanging. As the train blasts through, a clerk swings a catcher arm out of a mail car door and snatches the bag without stopping. In the same motion, the mail worker kicks a filled pouch out of the far side into a catcher net for the station agent. Done right, it's seamless. Done wrong, you throw a sack under the wheels and it snows mail confetti. It looks like a stunt, but it's a system.
And then you have the greatest postal employee to ever live, Owney.
Owney.
I love him.
In 1888, a scruffy terrier mix wanders into the Albany, New York post office. His name is Owney, and he's drawn to the texture and smell of the mail bags. When those bags get loaded into trains, Owney follows. He climbs on board the railway post office cars and just stays. The clerks let him. Why? Because almost immediately they notice something. This little dog guards the mail fiercely. He won't let anyone touch the mail bags except uniformed postal workers. One story says that after a bag falls off a wagon, the clerk goes back and finds both the bag and Owney missing. He retraces his route. There's Owney lying on top of the fallen bag in the middle of the road, barking at anyone who gets close. The moment he sees the uniform, he jumps off, wagging his tail. He's literally doing the job.
Just a working boy. So Owney starts riding. Albany to New York City, New York to Chicago, Chicago to St. Louis. He hops from train to train, following the mail bags, sleeping in the railway post office cars with the clerks. And the clerks idolize him because this job is brutal. Between 1890 and 1900, over 80 mail clerks die in train wrecks. More than 2,000 are injured. Clerks lose fingers to mail car doors, hands crushed when sorting cases slam shut when the train lurches. The rate of death and injury per worker is staggering. It was higher than what Union soldiers faced during the Civil War. These are wooden cars positioned right behind the locomotive, the most dangerous spot in any wreck. Every shift, you're rolling the dice, and yet remarkably, no train Owney rides is ever in an accident. Not once in 9 years. To the clerks, he's not a pet. He's a protector and a source of comfort in a job that could kill you any day.
That's what makes this next part so poignant. Word spreads. Postal workers across the country start watching for him. When Owney arrives at the next station, clerks give him tags: a leather collar from Albany, a brass medal from New York, a baggage token from St. Louis, a coin from Milwaukee. At every stop, another gift. By 1894, he's wearing over 1,000 tags and medals, a walking, jingling historical record. So many, actually, that they're weighing him down and threatening his neck. Postmaster General John Wanamaker personally commissions a special leather harness to distribute the weight across Owney's body and officially names him the mascot of the Railway Mail Service. The tags jingle like sleigh bells when he moves. Kids hear him coming and run to greet the mail train. He's not just Albany's dog anymore. He's the symbol of the entire American postal spirit.
Then, in 1895, the clerks in Tacoma, Washington get an idea. They've been watching international mail ships come and go. What if Owney went around the world? Not as a stunt, but as a genuine representative of the U.S. mail system, riding with registered mail shipments the way he rides the trains. The Postmaster General approves it, and Owney boards a steamship in Tacoma with mail bags bound for Japan. He travels for 4 months. Japan, China, Southwest Asia, across the Suez Canal, through the Mediterranean, across the Atlantic. And when he returns on Christmas week 1895, newspapers across the country cover it. The dog who rode the rails has now circled the globe. Stories circulate, probably exaggerated, that foreign officials honored him and that the Emperor of Japan gave him medals. True or not, it doesn't matter. It cements his legend.
I'm going to picture it's true.
Me too.
And I need to give a trigger warning for pet loss for the next section.
You're telling me, well, hold on. You're telling me a dog alive in the 1890s isn't still alive today?
Yeah, bad news. You might want to plug your ears for this next section,
Yeah.
Maya. So, Owney, unfortunately, does eventually die in 1897 in Toledo, Ohio. It's sudden and ugly. He's about 10 years old, not feeling well. And when a postal clerk chains him up for a newspaper photograph, chaining him up, something that's never happened to a dog used to roaming free, Owney bites. The Toledo postmaster orders him put down. It's a tragic, sudden end to a legend. The Chicago Tribune calls it an execution. But the clerks don't let him disappear. They raise money to have his body preserved through taxidermy and presented to the Post Office Department headquarters in Washington, D.C. Today, Owney stands in the Smithsonian National Postal Museum. The best museum. The best. Go there.
Okay, I need to.
Right beside the railway post office car, wearing that same harness covered in tags. In 2011, the Postal Service issues a stamp in his honor. A dog who made the danger feel less lonely, who turned a system into a family, who proved that even in a machine built for efficiency, there's room for love. He's the ultimate mascot for the ultimate public service.
With all due respect, I hope that postmaster from Toledo had an awful ending. Just, what do you mean?
They chained him up too.
Good. It's an incredible story. A little piece of heart in a high-speed machine. And that high-speed machine was only possible because they perfected the technique of sorting at scale. The post office and the railroads add fast mail trains, where pure mail is prioritized over regular traffic. Overnight New York to Chicago runs haul dozens of tons and hit the junction when the timetables say they will. By the 1880s and 1890s, railway mail service cars ride most mainline passenger trains. In the busiest corridors, you can get next-day delivery between big cities because the post office is literally working while moving. Some cars even have letter slots on the outside at stations, so you can drop a last-minute piece straight into the stream and shave hours off of its trip.
None of this is gentle. Wooden cars, coal sparks, winter ice, bad connections between cars. Railway mail services ride near the front, where wrecks are the worst. Clerks lose fingers to doors. Too often, their lives to collisions and fires. Robberies happen. The department hardens the cars, adds vestibules and better lighting, arms some crews when they are carrying registered mail, and drills procedures until they're reflex. By the late 1890s, you're looking at thousands of clerks working in motion and mail riding on well over 100,000 miles of track. It's a national sorting room on wheels.
Zooming out, wire plus rail is the formula. The telegraph carries headlines, prices, and orders in minutes. The railway carries the full newspaper overnight and the long letter across states while you sleep. Together, they change the tempo of the country. The government can move instructions faster, markets react faster. People who left can still feel stitched to home because the letter now travels at train speed and gets sorted while it moves.
That's the bright side. The cost sits in the footnotes. Those land grants aren't public because there are already people living on this land. Indigenous people are being systematically removed for this westward expansion. On top of that, the crews who lay the line are Irish in the east, Chinese in the brutal Sierra Mountains, formerly enslaved black workers, and poor white people along the plains. Groups of people our government has systematically oppressed for generations. They make our connection possible and are often barred from benefiting from it. The same federal power that connects the growing nation is breaking apart others to do so. A post office can be a lifeline and a lever.
You can watch the consequences on a map. A mail contract hits a line. A siding becomes a depot. A depot becomes a main street. A main street becomes a town council. The presence of a post office, now fed by rails and sorted en route, is a statement. You belong to the network. You can be reached, and you count.
And inside that big machine, it's still people who memorize every crossroads in 3 states. People who ride a brake platform in sleet. People who climb a coach box in weather that sends everyone else indoors. The institution is the frame. The labor is the picture.
Which brings us to someone who refused to wait for permission. With a cigar in her teeth, 2 guns within reach, she was a star route contractor who made winter blink first.
Mary Fields.
Her route is next.
Were we recording this because I was very sick when we first recorded it? But when my cousin Madeline was listening to the episode, she sent me like frantic texts that we did not warn people
About what the taxidermy looks
what
like.
they were going to see if they Googled Owney. So if you Google Owney and you're seeing pictures in color, that you're actually looking at Owney's taxidermied self, who's now in the Smithsonian. The black and white photos are
real.
Most likely him on the trains and looking very cute, but he looks extra scruffy, I'll just say, as a taxidermy, as his shell.
Yeah, I've never really had an appreciation for how taxidermy looks sometimes.
Honestly,
I think it's cool, but
yeah. Thinking of all the taxidermied out there, he is looking great.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
But if you don't know he's taxidermied, you just see him looking a little weird. Because
yeah, that's weird.
my cousin was like, "What's wrong with this dog?"
What's wrong?
Not knowing he was taxidermied. It's like, yeah, that is a shell of what he used to be.
Yeah, not alive anymore. So that's probably why he looks like that.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the shark that's taxidermied?
No, sharks. I'm
Yeah,
giggling.
it was like a art installation initially. It was preserved in formaldehyde, so I guess not technically taxidermied, but terrifying.
Oh, so many come up. So maybe I'm not.
Yeah, there's a
looking at
lot
the right one.
now.
Okay.
There's one specifically. I think her name was Rosie.
Rosie. Okay, let me look for Rosie.
Yeah. Yeah. Awful.
Rosie, are you okay?
She is not.
And they didn't even do anything to like make her look like
No.
she's swimming. They just threw
No,
her
in formaldehyde. Awful. Act 4. Stagecoach Mary.
Mary Fields enters history in the margins. In the early 1830s in Tennessee, she's born enslaved. No precise birth date because the people who enslaved her did not record it. After the Civil War, she's free, and she moves like someone making up for lost time. She works where there is work, Riverboats on the Mississippi, households that needs a forewoman, not a maid. She crosses paths with Judge Edmund Dunn, and when his wife dies, Mary escorts 5 Dunn children up north to Ohio to live with their aunt, an Ursuline nun who goes by Mother Mary Amadeus. That meeting becomes the axle of her life.
In Toledo, wow, a lot of Toledo history in this story, Mary signs on at the Ursuline Convent of the Sacred Heart. On paper, she is a groundskeeper, but in practice, she is the person who keeps the place running. She learns to read and write when she is in her middle age. She tends gardens like a general. One sister remembered, quote, "God help anyone who walked on the lawn after Mary had cut it." Mary swears, she loves cigars, she answers polite small talk with, quote, "I'm ready for a good cigar and a drink," which is not exactly convent etiquette. And she and Mother Amadeus become a pair that makes sense only if you know them. 2 stubborn women from opposite worlds who recognize loyalty when they see it.
When word arrives in 1885 that Mother Amadeus has pneumonia at a remote school she is starting in Montana, Mary does not send a letter. She goes. Train, boat, coach, the whole way to St. Peter's Mission outside Cascade. She nurses her friend and then rolls up her sleeves and gets to work. The mission is little more than a few buildings, and Mary makes it more. She hauls freight from town, she chops wood, hunts, raises chickens, plants vegetables. Mary helps lay brick and build additions when the school grows. She is the mission's supply chain and security detail.
Frontier respect does not mean frontier permission. By the early 1890s, a bishop decides that Mary is a problem. She drinks, she swears, she fights when disrespected, she carries a gun. An argument with a male worker turns into a standoff. That part is well attested. Some versions go further. They say shots were actually fired near the laundry yard, that the bishop's linens ended up full of holes, and that the man ran off with a wounded backside. He lived. Whether or not every detail of that tale is exact, the result is the same. The bishop orders the nuns to dismiss her and keep their distance. The sisters write that they intend to support Mary wherever she goes, but they cannot defy the order. Imagine being 60, pushed out of the only community that have ever felt like home, and starting over anyway.
She starts over in Cascade, the nearest small town, probably the only Black person living there at the time. She does laundry, tries running a local restaurant. The food is fine, but the business plan is very Mary. She feeds people who cannot pay and does not chase the debt. So the restaurant eventually fails. Then she sees a posting that looks like it was written for her. The post office is contracting a star route, private carrier, tough terrain, daily schedule, lowest responsible bid wins.
In 1895, over 60 years old, Mary Fields wins the contract for the route between Cascade and St. Peter's Mission. A stagecoach appears, donated by Mother Amadeus as a parting gift. A team of horses, a wagon for when the drifts are bad, a Winchester, and a revolver she calls by pet names. It is official. She is a federal contractor carrying the U.S. mail, one of the first women to do it, and the first Black woman anyone can document doing it.
People call her Stagecoach Mary because she does not miss, even through 30-plus miles out and back through the bumpiest terrain and snowfields that turn men around. If the horses can't make the trail, she straps on snowshoes, shoulders the mail, and walks. One winter night, a pack of wolves panics the horses and tips the wagon. Mary spends dark hours with her rifle and her voice, holding a circle of wolves off until the morning.
What a badass.
Totally.
Mary is a person people love. Kids wait for her coach like it's a parade float. They trail her up the street and she turns the end of a hard day into a small party. She babysits for $1.50 when families need it. In the summer, she tends flowers and hands a bouquet to the local baseball player who hits a home run. In the evenings, she takes her cigar and whiskey at the saloon. And if somebody forgets their manners, she settles it. The story in Cascade goes that she would bet $5 and a shot that she could knock a man to the ground with one punch. Very few took that bet twice.
The town notices who she is and makes room. When a law says that women cannot enter saloons, the mayor signs an exemption with her name on it. When her house burns down in 1912, neighbors donate lumber and labor and build it back. When her birthday comes around, the school closes so everyone can celebrate. That's not a novelty, that is civic love.
She retires the route in 1903, starts the laundry again, keeps the babysitting, keeps the garden, keeps the seat at the bar that she earned. She never marries. She never pretends to be smaller than she is. She wears what works for the work. She carries at least 2 guns, even in church. If you want a word for that now, call it gender-nonconforming. If you want to ask about her private life, be honest and also careful. The record is quiet on romance. What it is loud about is devotion. She and Mother Amadeus stay bound for decades. Mary crossed a continent to nurse her. Amadeus quietly helped her land that postal contract that kept Mary coming to the mission door every day. They worked around an order meant to separate them. Modern readers see that fidelity and read queerness there. And maybe it was simply love that did not have a public name. What is certain is the bond shaped Mary's choices and kept her rooted near a woman who had become her family.
There is a reason that she is remembered both in postal history and Western history. Star routes were where federal promises met the edge of the map. Winning one made you an entrepreneur under a public mandate. Mary proved that the United States could be represented by a Black woman, and that nothing broke in the process. In fact, things worked better. She expanded who the government could look like at your front door.
Her death in 1914 brings Cascade to a standstill. They hold the service in the biggest hall in town. People pack the aisles. Black and white, ranchers and shopkeepers, nuns and saloon regulars. Gary Cooper, who grew up around there, wrote later that she was born a slave but lived to become one of the freest souls ever to draw a breath, or a .38 caliber.
The myth sometimes flattens her into a stock character. Tough old Stagecoach Mary, the woman who drinks and fights. That erases the builder, the gardener, the babysitter. The literate adult who taught herself late in life. The loyal friend who crossed a continent when someone she loved was sick. It also erases the system she bent. If we round off her edges, we lose sight of what it meant to be her. We lose sight of the barriers she broke by simply showing up as herself and doing the job.
She belongs in the canon of the West, and in Black labor history. And for many listeners, she rings as a queer ancestor, even if the archives have no diary entry to prove it. That recognition is not about labeling her. It's about letting her complicate the story the way she complicated her town. The West was not all white men on horses. The post office was not all white men in uniforms. Mary Fields is the proof. She carried the federal mail, and she carried a whole set of possibilities the country had not made room for yet.
When we say people of agency, we mean her. Not because she worked outside the institution, but because she changed it from the inside, mile by mile, bag by bag, choice by choice. Act 5. The people of this agency.
In the 1840s, the mail almost slipped through our fingers. Prices too high, private carriers circling, a public entity on the verge of breaking. But we chose investment over retreat. Cut the postage. Issue universal stamps so ordinary people could post a letter without a clerk and without a scale. Call it a right, not a luxury. From that choice, a country was built outwards.
You can trace the line. Star routes pushed through snow and rivers. The Pony Express sprinted 10 days across the middle to prove what urgency could feel like, then yielded when the wire made urgency electrical. Rail arrived, and the railway mail service gave us a moving post office. Clerks with schemes in their heads, pouches swinging, catcher arms taking a bag without a stop. Letters crossing states while lamps rocked above the sorting case. That is what it looked like when an institution gets capacity and keeps a promise.
It made places visible to one another. A crossroads became a town when the postmark said it existed. A family still felt stitched to home because the envelope arrived where they lived. And yes, power flowed in behind those roots. Courts, banks, soldiers, westward expansion carried harm as well as connection. If we remember that tools take the shape of the hands that use them.
The hands matter. Star route drivers who overcame dark winter nights. Railway clerks who could throw 600 pieces an hour and never sit until the last one was pitched. And Mary Fields, unbothered by rules written for someone else. She took a federal contract and turned it into a livelihood. She widened the doorway of who could stand at a front gate and say, "I'm the United States bringing you a letter."
That's the point. Institutions are not abstractions. They are tools we keep or tools that we let rust. When they are funded and held to standards, they build. When they are bled and blamed, they fray. You feel it as a prescription that sits in a warehouse, a rural window shuttered at noon, a ballot that takes the long way around. The same network that once paced a train schedule to a canvas mailbag can still carry insulin on time, keep a small shop alive, deliver election materials with dignity, but only if we treat universal service like we meant it.
We started this episode near collapse, and Congress chose the path that stitched the map together. We crossed the West and named what that stitching did and what it took. We stripped the Pony Express down to what it proved. We watched the railway mail service make speed out of discipline. And we sat beside a woman who bent a system towards her. That is not nostalgia.
Care for what is public. Fund the roots. Fix what fails. Tell the truth about the past and widen the doorway for who gets to carry the promise next. If you are ever handed the bag, literal or not, carry it the way that Mary did. Steady, visible, and on time.
The country is still a long road. Institutions are how we meet each other on it, letter by letter, route by route, choice by choice.
Next episode, the first peacetime train robbery in American history accidentally creates federal law enforcement. Jesse James wears a KKK hood while murdering train workers and somehow becomes a folk hero. And a postal inspector walks 10 miles through freezing darkness on Christmas Eve to ambush outlaws at dawn.
The whole system was designed to protect robber baron gold, not your grandmother's letters. And the line between the good guys and the bad guys, way blurrier than the movies made it seem.
This one's got shootouts, lynchings, and raspberry-stained money. It's the bloodiest chapter in postal history.
Thanks for listening. See you next time. Thank you for listening to People of Agency. The institutions are messy, the people in them are complicated, and the fight over who they serve has never ended.
If you appreciate what we're doing here, digging into uncomfortable complexity instead of easy answers, leave us a review. Please share this episode with a friend. It's the best way for people to find small podcasts like ours. Find us on social media at people_of_agency.
Thank you for your support, because telling honest history, that's how we build better institutions.
People of Agency is created and written by Aileen Day with additional writing by Maia Warner-Langenbahn. It is hosted by Aileen Day and Maia Warner-Langenbahn.
This episode was edited by the amazing Kelsey Ruppersberg Day. Our beautiful cover art is by Sam Woodring. We have extensive sources for all of our episode linked in the show notes. Thank you to the post office for being the post office and having an incredible story to tell. Support your local post office by using postal services regularly. Mail a birthday card. Send your long-distance friend a piece of mail just for fun. There's no feeling like getting a piece of personal mail.